At night, I could hear screams coming from my father-in-law's room. My mother-in-law had passed away long ago. One night, I hid in my father-in-law's room to know his secret. And then, what my father-in-law did, oh my God! When I heard the terrifying screams for the first time, I was completely panicked. I woke up from a deep sleep and the screams and shouts were echoing throughout the entire mansion. My room was very dark. I groped for the lamp on the bedside table and turned it on. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. in the night and the screams were still echoing. I was surprised that my husband Virat, who was lying next to me, was still sleeping despite all the noise. How could he sleep in such a loud noise? I had just become Virat's bride and come to this house. Our wedding had taken place with great pomp and show. I had become the daughter-in-law of a very wealthy family. I too came from a wealthy family. My father-in-law was a very attentive person and I knew his behavior well. It was a love marriage between Virat and me. We liked each other in a wedding and started talking on the phone from there. We both came from wealthy families, so no one had any objection to this relationship. It was my first night of marriage and I heard this noise. It was the sound of a girl's belongings as if she was calling someone for help. At first I thought of going out of the room to see whose voice it was. Who was shouting so loudly at this time? But I was a bride of one day. How could I raise my voice and go out of the room? The voice continued for half an hour and then there was silence. I was surprised to see Virat sleeping so peacefully. How could he sleep in so much noise? But after some time the voices suddenly stopped, as if there had never been any noise. I lay down again and now my sleep had been completely disturbed. My mind kept going back to the screaming girl. Who was she? And why was she screaming like that? And why was everyone else so silent while her voice should have caused a commotion? Then I started feeling a sense of fear, because where the mansion was built, there were only jungles around. The village was 3 or 4 miles away. I had come to the village for a few days because I had to stay in the city. This was decided before the wedding and the bungalow of these people in the city was also very beautiful. And the mansion was so big that I don't know how many rooms were built here. The garden here was also very large. I felt like I was entering a palace when I entered this mansion. I had just taken a quick glance, but seeing the health here, my eyes widened. My room was decorated with flowers and candles. I was so proud of myself for it. People used to say that we looked like a perfect couple. But tonight, what I heard made my mind stop working. I don't know when I fell asleep while thinking about it. In the morning, Virat woke me up with a sweet smile. He said, "Get up, madam. This is not a city where you can sleep comfortably." I slowly opened my eyes and he was already up. Virat was taking off his clothes. He told me that my clothes were in the dressing room and I should wear them only. He said, and went to the bathroom. I got up comfortably and sat down. At first, I thought that the incident of last night might have been my excuse or delusion. While thinking about the same thing, I went to the dressing room, which was in my room. I was stunned to see the heavy and ornate dress. After freshening up, I struggled a lot to wear the dress. Virat had already left the room when some girls came in and started dressing me up with jewelry. When I stepped out, my father-in-law was sitting on the sofa. He looked at me and started smiling. He came to me and welcomed me by showering me with several thousand-rupee notes. Then he took me outside where the village women were waiting to see me. They had been waiting in the heat and sun for who knows how long just to catch a glimpse of me. My father-in-law introduced me as the new mistress of the house, Virat's wife. All the women greeted me. I could not stay there for too long as the sun had taken a toll on me. I quickly went inside and turned on the AC in my room to cool down. People kept coming in and out all day long. I only met Virat at night because he spent most of the day with the men. There are certain customs and traditions in the village. Husbands and wives spend less time together and more time with others. This was also the case with me. I was completely exhausted by night. So as soon as I lay down, I fell asleep and Virat began to tell me that you were upset with the atmosphere of the village. He looked at me lovingly and then I opened my eyes and smiled a little. I said, Virat, just think about returning to the city quickly. I'm not used to this kind of environment. For some reason, Virat's smile disappeared when he heard me. Then he sat on the bed and said, It's not possible right now, but I'll try. Even though I was still asleep, I opened my eyes wide and stared at him. Virat, I could not stay in the village for more than 2 days. You know this well. I feel uncomfortable with the customs and way of life here. The atmosphere here is strange to me. I cannot stay here. After hearing me, he fell deep in thought. He took out a cigarette, lit it with a lighter and started smoking. I fell asleep because I was exhausted. I woke up again in the middle of the night due to the same noise. The same screams of a girl calling for help to save herself. I immediately sat up and woke Virat up too. He started seeing me in his sleep. I said, Virat, I can hear someone screaming. Upon hearing my words, Virat said, What kind of noises? I'm not hearing any voices here. I was surprised to hear what he said. How was it possible? I could hear the girl screaming, but Virat couldn't. I looked at Virat in amazement and said that you can't hear the girl's voice. He said, No, I can't hear any voice. I am feeling sleepy. Do not disturb me. Saying this, he fell asleep again. I was scared, wondering if I was the only one who could hear those voices. I started trembling at the thought of it being a ghost. I clung onto Virat and lay down. My heart was beating loudly. Now I could not stay in this mansion even for a day. I was very afraid of ghosts. The next morning I started asking Virat to go back to the city. I said, I need to go back to the city. I am feeling scared. I have been hearing screams here for 2 days as if a girl is calling for help. I cannot stay here. I felt like crying because of fear and Virat was looking at me attentively. He was not making eye contact with me. He started saying, There have been such spirits in this mansion for years. Some of them make such sounds. Some people hear such voices as you are hearing. But those spirits have never harmed us. Otherwise, could my sisters-in-law have stayed here? I was not getting any peace from anything that Virat said. I was just waiting to go to the city. During breakfast, my father-in-law asked Virat when he was going to the city. Upon hearing this, Virat was left holding his teacup. But deep down, I was happy that someone had thought of sending us from the village to the city. Virat said, Whatever you order, Papa. He had a hard time saying these words as he was very scared of his father. His father-in-law said, Prepare to go to the city by tonight. Check out the work there. I was so overjoyed that I could not contain myself. I quickly finished my tea and moved my chair back. My father-in-law said to me, Daughter-in-law, why didn't you eat your breakfast properly today? I replied, I also need to pack for Virat and me. If we have to leave by evening, it will take time. Hearing my words, my father-in-law stared at Virat and said, You didn't tell your wife that she'll be staying here? These words hit me hard and I was looking at Virat with surprise. He said, I forgot, Papa. My father-in-law started saying to me, Daughter, you are our respect now, and the women of our house never step outside the mansion. You will stay here. Virat will only go to the city. On hearing this, I was shocked because Virat had not told me this before. He had said that I would have to live in the village for some time and then he would take me to the city with him. Out of anger, I got up and went to the room. I had been lied to. A little while later, Virat came into the room. I started crying. I said, I don't want to stay in this haunted mansion. You said we could live in the city. Go and tell your father. After hearing me out, he sat down with me and said lovingly, I can't take you to the city right now. Just stay here for a few months. Live like the other women here. Then I'll take you to the city. I said, I won't stay here without you. They'll kill me with their screams at night. I am very scared. He started saying to me, Don't pay attention to those screams. Whatever it is, it won't harm you. I can promise you that. Just keep the room locked and don't go out at night. Virat's words had frightened me a lot. I said, I can't sleep alone in this room at night. Virat thought for a while and then said, Okay, I'll arrange for a maid to stay with you in this room. But just try to make sure that Papa does not have any complaints against you. I nodded at this. Virat had left for the city in the evening and I was alone. At night, a maid started sleeping in my room. She spread her bed on the floor and lay down. When screams were heard at night, my eyes opened. I realized that the time when the screams were heard, the maid also kept changing her position while sleeping. I began to suspect that maybe she could also hear those screams. Many times I asked the maid about the screams and her face would turn pale and she would get scared. Then she would shake her head in no and say, I have not heard any such noise. I guessed from her fear that the story is something different. So I told her that I knew that the voices could be heard by her too. Hearing my words, she started folding her hands in front of me and said, Don't talk about it to anyone in the mansion or it will be very bad. Hearing the maid's voice, I became curious to know what the whole matter was. When I heard the screams at night, I decided to find out the truth. Because somewhere I had become convinced that this was not a matter of ghosts. I got up when I heard screaming at night and on tiptoe went to the door of my room and slowly opened it. I could hear those voices coming from upstairs. I walked quietly upstairs. Those voices were now sounding closer to me. When I followed the sounds, my senses were blown away when I saw the room in front of me. It was my father-in-law's room from where the screams of a girl were coming. My face turned pale. I went back down and entered my room to control my increasing heartbeat. I could not even think that such a thing could happen in my father-in-law's room. His wife was also not alive, nor had he remarried. How big he was in front of the world, then those voices? I started talking to myself. I had a lot of respect for him in my heart. I could not even think about him like this. Tears began to fall from my eyes. I sat on my bed and started crying. My father-in-law with women? No, how can this be? The villagers respect them a lot. Then what was all this? I stayed up all night thinking about them. Because I could not even think about him like that. He was sitting there at breakfast looking at my eyes while drinking tea. He said, Virat didn't talk to my daughter-in-law on the phone. That's why her eyes have swollen up with crying. I did not respond to his words. He started to smile on his own. Then he said that Virat is very busy there. That's why he could not make the phone call. I did not respond to his words. Today I could not even bear to look at his face. What a deceitful person he was. He would act pious and compassionate during the day, and at night, just thinking about it made my body tremble. I had thought of exposing him, but I did not know how much trouble I was getting myself into. When I heard the same voices again at night, I went out of the same room again. I started looking through the keyhole of the door. There was an 18-year-old girl looking like she was from the village with pain evident on her face. She was begging for her dignity with folded hands. She was screaming and shouting, but my father-in-law heartlessly threw away her scarf. I could not bear to watch any longer. I returned back to my room. Somehow I had spent that night. As soon as it was morning, I called Virat on the phone. I said, "You told me such a big lie. You said there are spirits in the mansion when there is nothing like that. Those screams are of innocent girls from the village who become targets of your father's lust." Whatever was coming to my mind, I told Virat everything. Upon hearing me, he became angry and said to keep my mouth shut like everyone in the mansion does. Otherwise, you don't know the power of Vikram. He will kill you. I was surprised to hear Virat's words. It meant that he already knew everything about his father. I hung up the phone. How could I remain silent after seeing something wrong? I just needed evidence because no one here spoke a word against Vikram. Therefore, before the night fell, I made an excuse of being sick, locked my room and stayed inside. I knew when Vikram goes upstairs, so I went out of my room through the backside window and reached to the upper floor without the help of pipeline. The window of Vikram's room was open at that time. I entered that room through that window, and that room was decorated like a groom's room. I hid in a corner near that window. At 2 a.m., Vikram came into that room and sat on the sofa. After a while, his servant bought a bottle of alcohol and placed it on the table in front of him. I turned on my mobile camera. After a while, a 17-year-old innocent girl entered the room. She was screaming and repeatedly saying that she wants to go to her family members. The servant pushed the girl inside the room and locked it from outside. Vikram was sitting comfortably on the sofa watching the helplessness of the girl who was crying a lot. She was banging on the door and asking for help. Her screams echoed in the lifeless walls of the mansion. The people there were completely silent about this atrocity. When the girl became tired of knocking, she came to Vikram and begged him to let her go. She said, "Please leave me, Vikram Sahab. Let me go. I'm your daughter's age. Have mercy on me." After listening to her, my father-in-law got up in anger and grabbed her hair, staring at her with angry eyes and said, "A girl from a lower caste? How dare you speak in front of me? Let me tell you what I do to those who speak in front of me." Saying this, he had slammed the girl hard on the ground, then he started kicking her in the stomach with his foot. The girl was writhing in pain. I could not bear to watch all this. Somehow I controlled myself and was standing there watching everything. Then the man grabbed the girl and threw her on the bed. And as soon as he lit his cigarette and put it on her face, my scream came out with the girl's scream. Vikram immediately backed away. He understood from my scream that there was someone else in the room besides the girl. Before he could find me, I escaped through the same window. Perhaps he had seen me. I was not a professional spy, just an ordinary girl. I went down the same way I came up, but instead of going back to my room, I went behind the mansion. I hid there. I felt a commotion throughout the mansion. I heard many footsteps. I hid in a dense thicket. Many servants were searching for me with torches. I had forgotten to breathe. I was afraid that I would be caught now. After a while, the servants left. As soon as they left, I took a deep breath. I began to climb a tree that was attached to the wall of the mansion. When I reached the top of the tree, I looked at the other side of the wall and it was a dense forest. I jumped there. I did not know where I would end up after crossing that jungle, but I kept running. I ran until morning, and as the light began to shine through, I found myself on a road. At that moment, a bus was passing by headed for the city. I got on the bus and kept my face hidden behind my scarf the entire way. When I reached the city, I showed the video to my father's friend who was a DIG. Because of me, the story of this disgusting game in that village came to an end. Vikram and Virat were both caught. They used to do wrong things with underage girls in the village and send them to other countries. I divorced Virat because I could not spend my life with such a person. I was happy that many girls were saved because of me. Thank you, friends.